Hey there! Today I will be revisiting a topic on which I did a video a long time ago. That was one of the first videos I ever did, and I thought it was time to revisit that topic because I got quite a lot of questions about it, and that is first fountain pens. So for people who are looking to start out in the hobby of fountain pens, writing with fountain pens, which pen do you select? And that is a daunting task because there are so many different fountain pens, pen brands, filling mechanisms, etc. out there. It can be a really challenging task to find one that you like. So although I have already done this, some of the pens that I described in that original video are not even available anymore. For example, the Noodler's Aromatic was a great pen, is discontinued. So I thought I would update the list a bit, and actually I think I've come up with a relatively different list now. I've used pens a lot more, and I've used a lot more pens, so I thought it would make sense to do this again. Now there are other videos like this. I know that Brian Goulet has a good video on starter pens, and this is my personal list. There are pens that could be added to this list but are not on there. This is my list, so if a pen is not on here, that doesn't mean it's a bad pen, but for some reason I may not have included it. One example would be the Noodler's Ahab. I've chosen to not include that in this list. There can be all kinds of reasons for that. This is my list. Alright? Now, I don't want to go too much into the whole technique and thing of filling systems of pens. I have a video on fountain pen filling mechanisms. I also have a video on different nib grades, so how to select a nib size that works well for you. But to cover those two topics very briefly for people who are completely new to fountain pens, first of all, filling systems. I think the two most common filling systems you will run into when you are selecting your pen is going to be cartridge converter filled pens, that's sometimes abbreviated as C/C online, and piston fillers. And then some pens may be eyedropper filled pens, also referred to as eyedroppers, quite simply. Okay, what's a cartridge? Really simply, it's just something like this. They come in all kinds of shapes, sizes, and ink colors. This is one by a Japanese pen brand. You also have the short international cartridges that you may remember from school. This is a cartridge, quite simply, is a plastic container filled with liquid fountain pen ink. This one has a ball agitator in there, which you may hear. It's very simple. You put this end on the back end of the section of the pen. So, for example, you would take a pen like this, usually unscrew it, and you have that cartridge. It would just go in here, seal is popped, you get ink, and you write. Now you saw that this pen has something else in there that is called a converter. The converter, quite simply, usually it looks something like this, and it's a really simple mechanism. What you do is you dip the whole front end, the section of the pen, in a bottle of ink, and then you twist this bit, that piston is drawn up, and that draws up ink. That way you can use bottled ink. Bottled ink is usually a bit cheaper because you buy more, it's a more economical way to fill your pen, and you have a lot more color options. But it's not necessarily the most practical because you would have to either lug around a bottle of ink or refill it every time. For example, if you're a college student, it might be an issue for you if you are mid-lecture and suddenly your pen runs out. In that case, a cartridge could be a good option because you can just carry a box of these, take the old one out, pop a new one in, and you're done. Now, environmentally, a little less efficient. Finally, an eyedropper pen, very simple. You unscrew the pen. I'm going to show you an example. This is one where you can do that. You just unscrew the section, you take a bottle of ink, you take an eyedropper, a pipette, you draw up ink, you drop it in the barrel, put some silicone grease around the threads of the section, and you're done. You can just write, and usually that allows you to take a whole lot more ink. I'm going to lift up my laptop for 1 second because a pen just rolled under there. Okay, so that's that. Then finally, the other thing I want to discuss before we get to the pens is nib sizes. Nib sizes typically run from fine to broad, and then some brands offer extra fine and double broad, some even triple broad. Then there are italics and obliques. Forget about those for now. I think most people would be very well off choosing a medium or a fine nib to start with and then go from there. For example, in the case of Lamy, it's very easy to buy replacement nibs. They set you back about $5, and you can go from extra fine, fine, medium, broad. You can even go for 1.1, 1.5, and 1.9 millimeter italics, which are just very broad for calligraphy, for example, or to add a bit of flair to your handwriting. But I wouldn't start with those. I would start with a medium, right, because it's medium. It's probably going to fit you well. If you don't like it, if you have very small handwriting, move a size down. If you have very big handwriting, move a size up. Some pen brands only offer medium. Some of them only offer fine and medium. Some of them offer broad, etc. too. Okay, having said that, let's have a look at the pens. I have lined up a number of pens here, and my top price is $50. I think obviously you are free to spend whatever you like on your first pen, but I wanted to get you a number of pen options that are affordable. And the first one we're going to start with, and I have separate reviews on all of these pens on my channel. So I'm not going to give you in-depth coverage. I'm just going to show you the pen, and then at the end of talking about all of them, I'm going to show you how they write. And this would be the first one. This is a very small pen. It's a pocket pen. This is the Pilot Ptee 1, and I am just checking out the price. This is a very cheap one at $3.80 over at jetpens.com. Now, there is probably a cheaper option, the Pilot Varsity, also known as V pen, but that's a disposable fountain pen. So once the ink runs out, in principle, that's it. You can refill them, but that is not easy. They were not designed to do that. I left those out. I want pens that can be refilled. This pen takes cartridges of a type like this, except they're a bit smaller because it's such a small pen. But as you can see, I just put ink in the barrel. That allows you to use quite a bit of ink. They're very simple pens, small, very portable. For me, they would be too small to use without putting the cap on the back. We call that posting. But if you do pop the cap back on there, you have a decently sized pen, and it actually has little knobs at the end to keep this cap in place. It's a small pen. It feels very plasticky, but it has a nib and it has a feed, and you can put either cartridges in or you can turn it into an eyedropper filled pen, and it does what it's supposed to do. It gives you a fountain pen. Not the greatest at nibs out there, but definitely not the most terrible. Okay, now if you move up just a little bit in the price segment, I'm just checking the price again. You have the the Platinum Preppy. That's a pen like this, and this will set you back $3.95. You can get this from gouletpens.com for that price. Okay, this is another very simple design where you get this nib. You can see this is a nib that has a black coating. You can get these in fine and medium, whereas the Ptee 1 only has one nib grade. This is the 0.5 millimeter nib grade. You see they have the name on there. Platinum is a Japanese company, this is their medium nib. You can use these with cartridges or a converter, or as I did, you can convert it into an eyedropper filled pen, and then it holds a lot of ink. So if you are, for example, a college student or a student of whatever kind, and you take a lot of notes, that could be very good for you because you can carry a lot of ink. Of course, once you accidentally unscrew it, you will spill a lot of ink. That's something you may want to consider as well. Alright, now if we move up in the price point by about 100%, you get to the range of $9.90, and that will buy you something like this. And as you can see, this starts to look a lot more like a fountain pen that a lot of people think of. This is a Jinhaeng, that's a Chinese brand, Jinhaeng X450. You can buy them on eBay, and then if you look around a bit, you can find them for about $1, but then they add shipping from China, end up with about $10 or $12. From gouletpens.com, you can buy these for $9.90 plus shipping. So everything I'm telling you here is without shipping. These pens, I think, have really nice nibs. They look very nice. They have nice finishes, as you can see here. They look pretty cool, and they take standard international cartridges or a converter, meaning you can use bottle ink, so you have more color options than cartridges typically offer you. Nice pens, and the one thing I will say that not everybody likes is this grip section, which has cutouts for the fingers. Not everybody is a fan of that. but you probably will not really be able to try this out in a store, because I don't know of any stores, brick and mortar stores, that sell Jinhaeng. Now for the same price, you can buy this pen's somewhat more luxurious brother, the Jinhaeng X750. You can also get that from eBay or Goulet Pens. This is, I think, in size, it's about a similar size. This one has an all-metal body, but you can buy these in a couple of finishes too. And like the X450, has a nice big nib, and a smoother section, which is nice for people who don't like those finger grips, as I said. Also, this one posts a little bit more securely if you like to put the cap back on the end of the barrel. Another nice thing about these pens, both the X450 and X750, is that these are what we call number 6 nibs. That's a fairly large nib, but they are available in a bunch of sizes. For example, from Goulet Pens, there are other companies. Monteverde also offers nibs in that size, which means you can go from extra fine to broad and then to italics, which give you a lot of line variation. So you can really expand the range of writing options you have with these pens relatively cheaply. Okay, now if we move up in price a little bit, I had some trouble finding this, but I think for about $15 to $20 you can buy something like this. It's a very thin, narrow pen. This is the Parker Vector. Now Parker is a brand that we probably all know. The little arrowhead is their logo. This was pretty much one of my first fountain pens, not the first, but one of my first pens. You can also get a metal-bodied version. You can get chisel-bodied versions. This is just plastic, very simple design, very thin, and it will do just what it's supposed to do. It'll write. And you can put in cartridges, or as I did, a Parker converter, and then you can use it with bottle ink. Simple pens, but they will get the job done, and I know that a lot of people start with this model. It's a well-known model and widely available. Unlike the pens I've mentioned so far, you can walk into many stationery stores all over the world, or sometimes even bookstores, office supply stores. They will sell this, so you can go in there, you can try it out. Okay, now if we move up a little bit again, I guess it depends a little bit on what price you can find for the Vector. You get into the range of the Nemo sign Singularity. Now this is a pen that you probably have to buy online. Never seen these in brick and mortar stores. I was just fiddling around a bit because I got some ink in here. This is a clear pen model, and the nice thing about that is that you can you see all the parts. You can see the nib through the cap, you can see the converter that's in there, and you can do a couple of things with this pen. Another number 6 nib, which means that again you can switch it out with quite a couple of nibs that are out there. xfountainpens.com sells these, for example, and they also sell nibs by a brand called Knox, which come in all kinds of variations, even oblique, so that is quite nice to experiment with. As I said, a nice nib. This is a medium, that's what it comes with by default, but it's pretty nice. You get a converter with the pen, which is cool. That means that if you want to experiment with bottle ink, you can. And I like this pen. The one complaint I have about it is that sometimes when I unscrew it, I unscrew the whole barrel. And you can use this pen as an eyedropper filled pen, but obviously when this happens, all the ink will run out of the barrel. So be a little careful if you try that. Okay, for $15, you can also buy a Pilot Metropolitan. Pilot, another Japanese brand. This is, I think, a really nice looking pen. It's simple, but it will definitely get the job done. You get a nice clip, you get a decent pen body, and this is all metal, and that's quite nice because it gives you a little bit more of a weight when you use it. Another cool feature is that these nibs can be interchanged with other Pilot nibs. For example, the ones you get on the models such as the B.R.E, the Plumix, the penmanship. You can just pull out this nib and put another nib in there, which is nice. Another nicely sized pen, a bit finer and narrower than the Nemo sign Singularity. This one comes with an arometric converter, which is just a fancy word for a converter that has a rubber sack. You squeeze here the metal bar, compresses the sac and then decompresses the rubber sac, and that draws up ink. But you can also use cartridges from Pilot in here. So this would not take standard international cartridges. This only takes cartridges from Pilot, which means you're a little bit more restricted in the options that you have. Okay, now if we move up to the $25 range, you get a pen like this. Now this is a very small pen, but don't be fooled by its size. This is the CAV EcoSport. You can buy these from a bunch of websites. Goulet Pens has them, Jet Pens has them, and I mean these are quite common too. The nice thing is, another very small pen body, but this is made to be posted, and then you have a decently sized pen. The clip comes off. You have to buy it separately, so if you don't like clips, you don't have to buy it, and you can just get rid of it, and that makes it a really nice pocket pen. This takes standard international cartridges. You can turn it into an eyedropper, but if you have a clear model, you can get ink trapped between the inside of the section and the outside of the nib collar, which is that black thing that you see here, and especially on a clear model like this you would see that. This is a gold plated nib. It's still steel, it's gold plated. That doesn't affect the writing quality, it's just an aesthetic thing. This is a broad nib that I have in here. It takes cartridges or a specific small converter, and it actually comes out, as you can see there. That is why I have this little bit of paper in there, but the converter used to be a bit more snug. I think I stretched it out a bit. Okay, now at around the $30 range, you get a pen that is very popular. This is the Lommy Safari. You can also buy an aluminum version called the AllStar. It's the same model except it's made of aluminum. These pens are very popular, and I think that is for two reasons. One is they're relatively affordable at $30. You're not set back a huge amount, and they are very, very widely available, both online and pretty much any office supply store that I have walked in here that sells fountain pens sells this pen. Okay, so what makes it special? Well, first of all, Lamy offers a large range of nib grades. Extra fine, fine, medium, broad, and then 1.1, 1.5, and 1.9 italic millimeters. So millimeters italic. Those are very broad, made more for calligraphy or artistic writing. That means that you have a very nice nib range because they only cost about $5 each. So for $30 you can buy this. For $20 extra you can have extra fine, fine, medium, and broad nibs, which really expands the things you can do with your pen. This is a broad nib, and I think this is a really nice all-round pen. It takes cartridges, or as in this case, a converter. One thing I will say about this pen is that it has grip scales that look like that, and not everybody likes that. Some people just cannot use this comfortably. So if you consider buying this, I would recommend you to go to a store, hold it first, see how you like it. As I said, they're widely available, shouldn't be too much of an issue. Okay, now if we move up just a little bit at $30.50, that's what I found this for online. Now this is another Lamy pen, so the same deal applies. They have the same nibs as the Safari and AllStar pens do, but this is the Nex. The Nex is a little bit more fancy, I think. You get a nice clip, you have a lanyard hole. Here you have a nice triangular barrel that runs out and then it becomes round, and the section is quite rubbery, which some people like. I think it's a bit more pleasant than the Safari section. So that's what you get for this pen. Again, cartridge and converter, so that too offers you quite some options when it comes to nib grades. Then, if you move up another $10 in about $40 to $45 range, depends a little bit on the finish you get, you can buy something like this, the FaberCastell Lume. I love FaberCastell. They make really nice steel nibs that are very, very smooth and pleasant to use, but as I said, you move up a bit in price. These are nice pens. They're not the biggest pens out there, but for me they are comfortable to use unposted, and you can use them posted. These are steel nibs, as I said. At this price you won't really find gold nibs, but very, very nice, very smooth. I really like using these. They take standard international cartridges or a converter like this one. The nice thing about this, has more metal parts, so it has a bit more weight. It feels very robust in the hand. Okay, the final pen that I have in this lineup of 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 pens is the TWSBI Diamond 580. TWSBI is a Taiwanese pen brand, and I think they make interesting pens. Interesting because they are affordable. This is a piston fill pen, the only piston filler in this lineup. And for those of you who have never seen that, that means that right here at the end you have a piston turning knob, the actual piston, and then the piston seal. And you will see that when I'm going to turn this, the ink level in the pen is going to rise up. Alright, so that's what you do. You just dip this pen into a bottle of ink and you operate that piston so that you draw up the ink. And the nice thing about that is that means that the whole barrel of the pen is used as an ink reservoir, giving you quite a large ink capacity, which is nice. This pen comes at a price of $50, which is not bad if you consider the price of the average piston filler. The nibs come from extra fine, fine, medium, broad to 1.1, 1.5 millimeter. I thought it was 1.5. Yes, 1.5 millimeter italics. This is a 1.5 millimeter italic, and you can probably see, unlike the other nibs that you've seen up to this point, this is very flat. It offers you quite some line variation. That was also one reason for me to include it here, so that you can see what these different nibs do. So, I have now discussed all these pens. What I'm going to do now is a fast writing sample. With every pen, I'm just going to write one sentence so that you get a bit of an idea of how it writes, what the nib looks like, etc. Guys, I hope this was useful. I hope this may have helped you a little bit in selecting a first fountain pen. Give it a shot. Take the plunge. I know it can be a big step, but in my case it's been extremely rewarding. I absolutely love using fountain pens. So just give it a shot. As I said, you don't have to buy a super expensive pen. Of course, it's nice to own an $800 pen, but that's probably not what you want to start with. If you buy a first car, probably not going to go for a Ferrari. You're probably going to go for something a bit more wieldable. So, let's see these pens in action, and I'll gladly see you later. Bye-bye. Alright, so this is Rhodia paper. And let's start with the first pen. That is the Pilot Ptee one. Let me move this a little bit to the side. There we go. There we go, Pilot. The ink in all these pens is cross blue. I wanted to go for simple, nice blue. So here you go. Writing is okay. You do feel quite some feedback. It is a pretty fine nib. It's the only nib grade you can get for this, and that's what it is. But then again, you don't pay that much for it either. Okay, here we have the Platinum Preppy. This is the medium nib. There's also a fine nib, which does offer a little bit more feedback, I think. Same ink, and this nib I like. This medium nib, I think it offers a nice amount of smoothness. It's not the smoothest nib you'll ever use, but it's definitely not a terrible nib either. And I think especially for a simple beginner pen, you could do worse than use this one. Okay, then we move up to the, let me see, still adjusting this a little bit better. Here we go with the Jinhaeng X450, nice nib, Nice and smooth. And as I said, a nib that you can easily exchange with any other number 6 nib that suits your fancy. Okay, then its somewhat more exclusive brother, Jinhaeng X750, another nice wet nib. Definitely smoother than the Preppy and the Ptee one. And you see you can squeeze out a little bit of line variation there, which is nice. Okay, the symbol, Parker Vector. This is the fine nib. Quite scratchy, I must say. And also I seem to have a paper fiber or a hair or so stuck in the nib. That's better. Yes, definitely not my favorite nib ever. So far I would prefer the X750 or X450 in smoothness. Okay, the Nemo sign Singularity, as you see, that's case in point. Demonstrate it there. Just wipe down the section. Okay, the Nemo sign Singularity medium nib. Pretty nice writing experience, but not as smooth as the Jinhaeng's as far as I'm concerned. Okay, then we have, that was a medium nib, then we have the Pilot Metropolitan. This is also a medium nib, but typically on Japanese pens the nib grades are one grade below that of a Western pen, so this would be more like a Western fine, for example a Lamy fine. But for such a fine nib, typically the finer the nib, the more feedback, just because there was less tipping material. The more feedback you get, and this one is actually quite smooth. Alright, the Calico Sport. This is a broad nib. It's nice to see how all of these nibs offer a little bit of different saturation. The X750 is very wet, quite dark. This one's a bit lighter. Very nice, very smooth nibs. I've always liked the Calico nibs a lot. Then we get to the Lamia Safari. This is a very wet, broad nib. Very smooth, nice writing performance. We're almost there. Here we have the Lommy X. This is actually the M88, I believe, but Lommy X. This is a medium nib. Same nib type as on the Safari, as I said earlier. Nice and smooth. a nice smooth writing performance offered by that nib. Okay, now we move up to the FaberCastell Lume, a broad nib, illegible, sorry, still illegible. That's better. I like that a lot. Nice, smooth writing performance. And then finally, the TWSBI Diamond 580 in a 1.5mm italic. Now what you see here is something different. If it writes, I'm just going to write down 580. The 1.5mm italic, so for those of you not familiar with that, it offers a lot of line variation naturally because of the shape of the nib, which means that in this case you can also use it for calligraphy, and it adds a bit more expression to your writing. And you could use this for, as I said, more calligraphic applications. Like that. Alright, so there you have it. 12 pens that I think would make good starter pens. Different nib grades ranging from fine to 1.5mm italic. I hope this has given you some ideas of pens you may want to check out if you're in the market for a first pen, or a second pen for that matter, or of course any pen. I hope this was useful, and I'll gladly see you later. Bye bye.